and India now battle coronavirus, the thrust remains on maintaining social distancing and avoiding large gatherings. Today was a day when the curfew that has been imposed in every state in the country has shown signs of actually making a difference. However, there is still no dearth of people openly flouting the norms. And these people are not just commoners, but even high-ranking officials and policemen.
And this, Rajdeep, is likely to be one of the key thrusts of what the Prime Minister says. He's asking people to stay home and not do this because Narendra Modi is saying stay home in your own best interest. Unfortunately, that's something that people are not listening to, and some of them have had to deal with the consequences. Take a look.
With India in lockdown, are we going to tolerate our famous Chalta Hai attitude? As India struggles to avoid the dreaded phase of community transmission of COVID-19, are we going to let corona villains dictate our fate? Not here on India Today, and that is why we present the COVIDiot Top 10 Countdown. A reminder of what not to do as we fight this virus together. Let's begin. Opening the countdown, we have Mumbaikars who do not understand what a curfew means. The Mumbai Mahanagar and Economic Centre has been witnessing big jams despite the curfew and the lockdown. Vehicles can be seen on road. Police are being forced to check ID cards. Second, the Dadar market is completely crowded this morning. While wholesalers have no choice in the matter, and we can empathize, this crowding of markets completely defeats the purpose of the Maharashtra lockdown. And please remember, Maharashtra already has the single largest number of COVID-19 cases in the country. Third, this is a high-profile corona villain. Madhya Pradesh's new Chief Minister, Shivraj Singh Chauhan, has imposed curfew in the state capital Bhopal and Jabalpur. But what wasn't before these shocking scenes right before his swearing in on Monday night? Chauhan was seen in a crowd of BJP leaders hugging and in close proximity, making a total mockery of Prime Minister's appeal for social distancing. Shivraj Singh Chauhan is actually a bit of a repeat offender because on the day that Kamal Nath resigned as the Chief Minister, these were the shocking scenes of celebration presided over by Chauhan. Crowds of Karyakartas and jubilant BJP leaders in Bhopal who could not give two hoots for the health strictures. On Sunday, the massive crowd sat in protest against the CAA in Moradabad despite warnings in Uttar Pradesh, a state that has seen several cases of coronavirus and is bracing for even larger numbers. An utter insult to the administration's struggles against community transmission. Tamil Nadu is also under lockdown, but these are scenes of business as usual in Chennai. And in Ramanathapuram, long lines are still being seen outside supermarkets. Imagine even one of these persons has the virus. In Ahmedabad, after shameful scenes of crowds spilling out onto the streets for Garba following the Janta curfew on Sunday, the police is still battling people who insist on breaking the curfew and moving around as though nothing has changed. What you see here is happening across the country. Please think about that for a second. In Bengal's Bankura, lockdown rules are being openly flouted at markets. While one needs to look at people's plight with empathy, the total disregard for social distancing begs the question. Will acts like this send India the Italy way? The lockdown in Delhi Noida is being better enforced now. But that does not mean it did not begin with scenes like these, with even ambulances stuck in traffic and angry motorists taking their frustration out by parking their car at border barricades. And finally, as Kerala's model is touted nationally, this happened on 21st of March in Kerala's state capital, Thiruvananthapuram. Despite warnings and the Kerala government's extremely tough fight against community transmission, This traditional Aratu procession was organized by Malankizu Sri Krishna Swami Temple, where hundreds of people participated, risking their own lives and those of others. There's only one true rule. Do not be a COVIDiot. Stay home, stay alive. Bureau Report, India Today.
Now, one of the things that's disturbed me most through the day, Rajdeep, is the fact that there are doctors, nurses, paramedic staff that are complaining that the colonies in which they stay, the landlords in those colonies are harassing them, asking them to leave because they're dealing with corona patients.
You know, I had a story of this come this morning, Rahul, from Warangal, where a doctor went on Facebook saying, I'm a house surgeon working in the MGM hospital, Warangal. Many doctors in the city are being asked to vacate their rented homes by their owners, stating the reason that doctors staying in their homes will make them more susceptible to the virus. One owner said, we are dirty. Now this comes within 48 hours of the Prime Minister appealing to people to clap, applaud doctors. We applaud. And then 48 hours later, we stigmatize them.
That applause.
And that happens in AIIMS and it happens in Warangal.
But this is the most foolish thing that anyone can do, because if, God forbid, you or I were to contact the coronavirus, the only people who can help us are the same doctors, nurses who are being stigmatized, who we're asking that they should leave their house. If somebody leaves his house, how will he take care of the patients? This is complete madness.
You know, it's happened there. There was another instance that has come to light this morning, Rahul, where a doctor or someone from the doctor's staff was going to collect a patient who's suffering from cancer near Manipal and was stopped by the police and saying, you know, was said that you can't go and, you know, you're violating curfew orders. So I think somewhere we have to realize that doctors are on the front line of this battle. The last thing that you need is to tell your soldiers who are on the front line, we don't want to have anything to do with you because you're going to get gunned down
and
first.
Imagine if you're injured, who's going to take care of you? Take a look at this report.
बड़ी प्रॉब्लम्स आ रही हैं.
Hello everyone. Many of you knows me, and who doesn't know me, I want this video to go on viral.
Harassed, stigmatized and hounded to tears.
Being in service.
This is an Indigo air hostess who took a few minutes out from her ride to work to send out his heartbreaking cry for help.
Being a part of a reputed company, my company is taking complete precautions which is required to me to be safe from COVID-19. In spite of that, people are spreading rumors in my locality that I'm suffering with corona.
She's one of thousands of Indian professionals who don't have a choice but to work at the very front lines of the corona crisis. And yet, listen in to how she and her family are being treated.
When I'm not at home, they are coming and harassing my mother like anything. She cannot go to the market to buy groceries because people are refusing her, which is a place full of hypocrites, including...
Her heart-rending cry has gone viral, instantly making her the face of the rampant harassment and hounding of airline crews by vigilante resident welfare associations in gated colonies across the country.
My rest of the crew members also facing the same problem, being in a part of this service industry, whereas we are being harassed for doing our duties.
With her video going viral, the Kolkata police has been forced to step in, with Kolkata's police commissioner himself tweeting and assuring action.
My job says that I have to be there.
Her weep is one instance in the reality of rampant hounding of frontline workers.
Today I want to give out a small message.
In an earlier video, a girl claiming to be an Air India flight attendant went viral where she alleged that crew members like her were being discriminated against by housing society. And on Monday night, these were the scenes outside the home of an Air India crew member in Delhi. Seen here are Vigilante Residents Welfare Association members harassing the family.
Who are you to come to my house? You don't have any right to come to my house, okay?
So bad was the situation. Air India has even issued a press release calling out the menace. With domestic flights coming to a halt in the country today, remember that thousands of airline staff will be relegated to their homes, where they remain vulnerable to the ignorance of colony dadagiri and panicked bigotry. Let us make a pledge today to call out vigilantes in our colonies, to educate them, and if necessary, call the police to handle anyone taking matters into their own hands. Our frontline workers deserve our respect, our thanks, and our understanding. Nothing less. Bureau Report, India Today.
There you have it. The stigmatization of Air India employees, of doctors, I find it utterly shameful. Utterly shameful. Focus now on the Prime Minister's speech. Rahul in a moment will tell you all the words that the Prime Minister used in his first speech, but all eyes are now on his second speech. Starts in what, about 20 minutes from now. We're joined by K. Sujata Rao, former Health Secretary, Vikram Singh, former DGP UP, Dr. Amrish Mittal is Chairman and Head of Endocrinology at the Max Hospital, Dr. Giridhar Babu is Professor and Head, Life Course, Epidemiology, Public Health Foundation of India.
I want to show our viewers a live word cloud compiled by the India Today Data Intelligence Unit dissecting the first speech on the coronavirus of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Here he spoke of pandemic 14 times, the corona 15 times, citizens 13 times, 11 times he spoke of curfew, he spoke of service 10 times. And now the key focus will be really on trying to get people to follow the advisories that have been put out on the lockdown. I want to go across to Vikram Singh first, because the critical thing here would be to try and get people to stay at home, not make the mistakes that Italy made, not end up violating the lockdown orders. What do you believe, sir, with all the experience you have, would be the best way of trying to achieve that?
All soft options are over, unfortunately, Rahul ji and Rajdeep ji. It now has to be a bit of arm twisting and coercive measures. You have seen people venturing out of their homes, even to the extent of doing a garba in Ahmedabad. This is totally unacceptable. Every person who does not subscribe to this norm is a moving live bomb, is a biological bomb. And in this war, even 99% marks are not pass marks, they are fail marks. It has to be 100%, otherwise it's just failure. Therefore, the police would be well within their rights. Epidemic Disease Act 1897, number 1. Also, the provisions of Section 144 of the CRPC will have to be ruthlessly enforced. We have seen the success stories of China. Unfortunately, we cannot subscribe, but there, if somebody were to move out like this, the sentence and the punishment is with life. I do not recommend that, but at the same time, we have to draw our lessons. There are no soft options, and to that extent, the nation has to take a tough decision, which we already have. But we expect every person to fall in line. India expects every person to do his and her duty.
You know,
this shaming has to go.
We've seen Sujata Rao, when the Prime Minister gave his first speech a few days ago, he spoke about 5 p.m., clap for 5 minutes. Number of Indians joined in, a large number of Indians. Therefore, it obviously means that the Prime Minister's word carries a lot of weight. Would you like to see the Prime Minister in that sense reiterate now much more strongly and emphasize this mantra of stay at home to stay safe? Do you want that to be the primary mantra without getting into anything about applause, clapping? Because that, in a way, as we saw after 5 p.m., led to some people coming on the streets almost as if it was an Indo-Pak match to celebrate a victory.
I agree with you that 5 p.m. Clapping really trivialized the whole message, the importance of the message that he was trying to say about social distancing. So I do hope that this time round he keeps the talk very focused on the disease, on the infection, the way it spreads, and the importance of social distancing. But having said that, the Prime Minister can only do that much. He can appeal to the people, he can try to convince them of the need to be self-disciplined, and the way he put it was very nice, self-regulation and self-discipline and restraint. And I think that kind of message is what, as a leader, he would give. But more importantly, I'm a bit disappointed that at the bureaucratic and administrative level, we haven't been able to make the people understand, both through our messaging and through training and to communication with the local communities as to the importance of this measure. That you can't expect the PM's one speech to bring in that behavior change.
Right.
And why I say this is that what Dr. Singh said before me, you cannot force, even the British, in their brutal British, when they were a colonial power, exactly 100 years ago there was plague. They could not enforce the Epidemics Act by beating up people, uprooting them, and so on. The resentment was so huge against the government. You cannot afford that. You can't beat people into submission. You have to make them understand. Everyone knows that their life is precious. But you see, why I say this understanding is important, the police is not allowing anyone to walk. There is a woman who needs to deliver a child. She needs to go to the hospital. There's a sick person who needs to go somewhere. There are these kind of emergencies, and the infection doesn't spread by air. So, as long as there's a distance of 1 meter, you don't have to be so paranoid about not wanting to see even one person out of the window. That, I think, there has to be balance in the way in which we implement this rule.
Right.
And I think there has to be, we have to take into consideration that the human beings that we're dealing with.
Oh, absolutely.
You just simply
Dr.
cannot
Amrish
bring
Mehta,
the law and force
at
and
the Max
beating
Hospital,
up. Violence is not the answer. I'm sorry.
I'm very worried about doctors, paramedics,
Sorry?
staff, nurses at hospitals like AIMS being asked to vacate their homes. Now, this is completely avoidable. How do we sensitize RWAs? There were so many stories coming in of anybody who was moving out, rendering an essential service, told you find some other place, don't come back to the colony. Where are these people supposed to go? If somebody is a police person, if somebody is a doctor and you don't let him back into the colony, or you ask him to evict, where does he go? And if he actually starts evicting, the job that he should be doing of trying to save lives, he can't do it. How do we try and stop this, sir?
I think, you have to sensitize people. People will be what they are. You realize that. You realize that they followed the Prime Minister so well. They did a voluntary curfew from 7 a.m. till 5 p.m. and then it all went haywire in some areas at 5 p.m. So unless people understand, this has to be this is really being selfish. This is being ignorant. And this is actually, in a sense, being criminal, because if you're actually targeting those people who are supposed to handle the situation, whether it's the police, whether it's the airline staff, whether it's the doctors who are at the forefront, and nurses, and all the staff of the hospital. We just talk of doctors, but all the staff is the same. We're really exposed, and the least you expect is sympathy and understanding from your neighbors. So if this is happening in some parts, and I'm sure there are a few incidents like that, I don't think this is a widespread phenomenon, but they really should be curtailed and people should be taken to task. So you cannot expect a doctor's firstly putting his life at risk, sometimes, with not always the best protective equipment. So, you are dealing with people, you don't know who has coronavirus, and then you come home and you're uprooted from your home. So that's really, obviously...
It's really terrible. I want to show something to our viewers that, Rajdeep, you may find interesting. The India Data Intelligence Unit looked at all the districts and states of India where a lockdown has been enforced. And remember, this is changing constantly. So when we last did our calculations, 83% of India's population, that's 1 billion people, have been asked to stay home, stay safe. 1 billion people. This, Rajdeep, is the biggest social experiment in the history of mankind. We are part of that.
That's right. Even if you look at China, it was parts of China, specific provinces that were under lockdown. It spread to 1 or 2 other provinces at some stage, but by and large, it was in Wuhan. In India, you've got every state, which is why it's a huge exercise. I mean, you can't underestimate the scale of what is being done at the moment. Dr. Giridhar Babu, in a sense, do you believe that really is the key now in the next 2 weeks to ensure, and that is what the Prime Minister really needs to reinforce, not just till the 31st, but possibly even longer than that, the next 2 weeks are critical in ensuring that we don't move from stage 2 to stage 3 and that we are able to limit this to contact testing and not to community spread?
Yeah, I completely believe that this is the most powerful weapon or an asset or the strength that India has. So as all the other panelists also have opined, we do not have any other strategy other than the Prime Minister's message which was aired in the last time. But Rajdeep and Rahul, I need to explain a little bit of epidemiology behind how this epidemic can be controlled. So there are only 2 strategies. One is containment, the second one is mitigation. Whatever we have been asked to do as a country is the biggest social experiment, as I said in my previous interview with your channel. This is making sure that everybody stays at home, therefore the transmission of the virus from one person to another, that speed is reduced. Whereas another strategy is about containment. What is containment? We identify all cases who are positive, and also we identify all the contacts. So let's assume for the next 14 days, the next entire country is shut down, and then suddenly we come back to normalcy. But if you have not done containment, we can still have the infection. Therefore, both have to go hand in hand. In order to do that, my appeal to the Prime Minister and the national task forces, we have done tremendous job, and I can tell you we are ahead of the curve in terms of all the other countries in the world. Many people are just finding only the negatives of how this is being managed, but I can tell you with assurance that the kind of efforts and the phase of the epidemic at which we have done is phenomenal. This will give lessons which other countries have not seen. But in order to be completely effective, what we should be doing is we should be reviewing those states which are not reporting enough cases. We should be contact tracing all those people who might have got the infection. Only then our story will be much different from any other country in this world.
No, so Dr.
my
Babu,
expectation
explain this
is that
to us.
yes,
I was reading the
PMs
India simulation done by Princeton University, the John Hopkins University, John Hopkins Center, and also then the ICMR, the Indian Council of Medical Research simulation. Now there is a worst case scenario, there's a probable scenario, there's a positive outcome. I want to understand if things stay the way they are, where it sounds like we have a complete lockdown, but in reality it's a partial lockdown because in places it's not being followed. What is the rate of spread, the R0, which is the rate of spread? What do you suppose would be the rate of spread if things stay the way they are at this moment?
I wouldn't be able to give you exactly, because that will be like an astrological prediction. I don't think any epidemiologist or any statistician will be able to guess, but my best guess in terms of how these things are spread out as of now is, we have done, I don't agree, Rahul, that it is partial lockdown. Yes, there are instances where people have come out and celebrated, but for most of the time, people are getting used to this culture. We should also give credit to the people of India, because this is a voluntary act of staying in houses. This has not been ever done in history, and we are doing this because we have been convinced that this is a good thing. So it will take some time for us to set in. I think today's message, today again the Prime Minister coming on air and then convincing people is very important. But I'll answer your question. We have seen exodus of people going from Mumbai to Bihar in trains much before the lockdown. We have seen states like, if you see the entire Tropic of Cancer and then see the states around it, it's as if there is a band of immunity around this imaginary line, an imaginary immunity, where cases are very few in these states. Is that possible? I wouldn't think so. So therefore, these states need to be reviewed by the Prime Minister.
But that's an important point to make, because Rajdeep, just today, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, has put out a study which says that in any country with a temperature of more than 18 degrees, there's only a 6% infection. So basically they're making the point that of all the infections, wherever the temperature is high, of all the total infections, only 6% have been from countries where the temperature is more than 18 degrees at that time.
And we've also seen, and this is also being this is being contested, that countries which are relatively poorer, we're seeing it with sub-Saharan Africa, we're seeing it to some extent with South Asia, are less prone at the moment than those who are the more affluent countries.
What could it be? Let's ask Dr. Mittal that two things that could have happened. One, that the colder countries, most of them are also the richer countries, and therefore they're testing more significantly than some countries in South Asia and maybe in Africa. That's one possibility. The other is that there is something in the air, there's something in the temperature that makes it, that makes this virus thrive in cold conditions and struggle to spread in warm conditions, which could be fantastic news for a country like India.
Yeah, Rahul, the MIT study suggests that, but it's very guarded. It's very careful. You really cannot say that this is going to be the case. There is some evidence that in dry, cold, temperate climates, say between up to 18, 17 degrees Celsius, there is greater propagation of the virus, and there is hope that in warmer and moist climates it will be little less, although Singapore and others don't really suggest that. Now, as far as the number of cases go, there is a huge, you can't make much out of that, because every country is adopting its own testing strategy, from South Korea on the one extreme, and for example, the US also, or England actually, UK, on the other extreme. So every country has its own strategy. It is the deaths death is always a well-defined endpoint. Sorry to sound clinical, but that's how it is in medicine and statistics and epidemiology. So it's the number of people dying who really reflect at the moment the gravity of the whole situation. And second would be the number of people requiring ICU care and the number of people requiring ventilator care and all that. But deaths is a very solid endpoint. And so there also it seems perhaps that we may be better off, but it's really premature. I think we are still on the cusp and it could blow out any time. And we need to be really cautious. And one important point that I will make is, while I support the lockdown and I think it is necessary, it was mandatory right now, it cannot go on for too long. People will be without jobs.
Sure. That is one of the dilemmas of this exercise. The longer you carry on with the lockdown, the more are its economic impacts. But if you keep it short, then the greater the danger of the health risk. But there is one aspect, Sujata Rao, in a country as large as India with 30 states and union territories, the Prime Minister's message in itself will, in a sense, have to be adapted, embraced, adopted by states. We are seeing more and more chief ministers following the same playbook now. Every chief minister now recognizes the need to talk to people, the need to ensure that the curfew is in place. Has the time possibly come that this is the one issue that has cut across India's political divide? China was able to do it because China is an authoritarian regime. India, at the end of the day, is democracy. You need every...
I think that's the fantastic outcome of what we are seeing, that irrespective of political parties, all the chief ministers and all the states are falling in line, because after all, they're all kind of worried about the welfare of their own citizens. So I think that's absolutely wonderful, and the PM taking the leadership in talking to the nation and having a review with the chief ministers must have had its own salutary effect. But having said that, and since I have your attention, I want to make two quick points. One is that, this whole irrational behavior of fear that we are seeing, the way they're treating pilots or they're treating doctors, reminds me of the HIV/AIDS. So, that was the time, if you remember, there was stigmatization. And that's furthered by acts like what AAP has done in Delhi, putting billboards saying this is a house of quarantine, where somebody who's being quarantined is being put inside a house. Now, these kind of acts do strengthen the stigmatization aspect of this disease. So therefore, I think with only right information, and once the cure comes in where people are not seen to be dying so much, they will be calming of these fears. So I don't think we need to make too much of these kind of expressions of anxiety and fear that we are seeing.
So we have just about a minute to go before the Prime Minister
we're
takes
discussing
over
so
and really
much on
gives
that.
us...
No, just one more point.
Go on, ma'am.
No, I just wanted to say I'm disturbed with the anecdotal reports I'm getting in Hyderabad, for example, of a large number of people crowding into hospitals with fever complaints, and not many of them are being tested. In fact, not at all. So there's a bit of a denial of testing. So I do wish that the testing is scaled up 5-fold or 10-fold, and both public and private clinics, patients who are turning up with fever and cough are tested, because we must know the magnitude of this infection, and we can't be talking about scenarios on this 500 cases of positive.
So the Prime Minister is just about to start.
We really don't know what's happening unless we get a grab on the data.
What are you expecting him, Rajdeep, to say today?
Look, I think the Prime Minister's strength is his ability to reassure people. He is a good communicator, and I think if he avoids any attempt being made for the headline grabbing, which was, I thought, one of the weaknesses in his first speech. Not enough substance.
I don't agree at all, Rajdeep. Come on.
5 minutes, to my mind,
it
that
kind of
took
gives
away
people some mission, it
Yeah,
kind of mobilizes them. Hello everyone, this is Rahul Kanwal here. Hope you enjoyed this video. For the latest news and analysis, like and subscribe the India Today YouTube channel, and don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated.